Hello, today I'm going to be talking about managing absenteeism, turnover, and retaining staff. First, we need to know what absenteeism, turnover, and retention are. So, the definition: absenteeism is when this person does not show up to work and or calls off. Turnover is the number of staff members that have left the unit and how many of those positions have been filled. And staff retention is how long do staff members stay on that unit. There are two different types of absenteeism. One of them is voluntary, and the other one is involuntary. Voluntary absenteeism is um, it's under the employee's control. So basically, since spring is coming up, calling off for a sporting event or not going to work because the weather is nice. Versus an involuntary absenteeism is something that's outside of the employee's control, whether it be personal illness or injury, a family responsibility, or some type of transportation issue. So voluntary is there's a choice. Involuntary is something happened to you. There's no choice. Managing absenteeism in a unit, it should show being a good role model by rarely taking sick days. I know in my unit there's nurses that don't call off at all or haven't called off for the 2 years that I've been there. We can also improve coworker relationships. So it's shown that when coworkers have a strong relationship, they won't call off as much because they look forward to working with that person. Enforcing absenteeism policies and monitoring each employee and documenting absences. I know in our unit we have a book where when a person calls off, we note the time and the date that they called off and for what shift, and you're not allowed to call off for another 30 days. And if you do, you get a verbal warning, and then you won't be able to call for another 90 days. There's policies in place, but the management actually has to enforce it. Also, reducing job stress and overall stress in the unit. I know that's hard to do at times with the census being so high, but we can just do little stuff. I know for us on Wednesdays, we have therapy dogs come in for the patients, and it just helps overall morale of the staff as well. Rewarding staff with good attendance with bonuses or other rewards. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's a movie, but people like to get rewarded. Make it a standard to have good attendance, especially with newer employees. Um, so, yeah. Retaining staff. So, to retain staff, people have to have their job satisfaction, they have to love what they do. Um, the relationship with the nurse manager and other staff members also plays a part in that as well. If people don't like their staff members, then they won't stay at that unit. If they don't like their nurse manager, they're going to move on as well. Also, the shift worked. If a person cannot change their shift, let's say they work evening shift and they want to work day shift and that's not available, they will go to another unit or another facility altogether. Um, Fair rewards and punishments. So basically, that everything is fair going on in the unit. That it's not one person being um, pointed out or everything's getting pinned on or all of that. Um, Expectations of the unit have to be clear and concise for everybody to move forward. Um, Compensation also takes a big role in that. People want to feel that they're making a difference, but they also want to get rewarded um, with money. So they want to know that they're getting their best dollar, and if not, they'll go on to another facility. And nurses' values versus institutional rules and guidelines and values. So if a nurse's values don't align with the institution's rules, guidelines, and values, then they might not stay there as well. So for retention, there's Patient satisfaction and a healthy workplace helps with retention. So in nursing, there's a link between patient satisfaction and nursing satisfaction. So if the patient is satisfied, the nurse feels satisfied because he or she did her job. Um, but when a patient is dissatisfied, we know the shift kind of drags along and it just feels kind of down and that it's not going to go, the day's not going to go fast enough. A healthy workplace also helps with retention. So collaboration between nurses and their healthcare staff, that being either, for example, doctors, case managers, physical therapists. There needs to be a good relationship between all of these people for us to give good patient care. Appropriate staffing, which is hard right now, I know at LGH especially, but um, having appropriate staff, not overworking or overstaffing, I mean, understaffing off shifts or nurses, because then that's how people get burnt out. Um, Authentic leadership, having somebody that you know actually cares about you in a management position. Communication is key as well, and there's good communication throughout the whole unit. People feel heard and people feel cared about. If not, they're gonna feel isolated and by themselves. Recognition as well. I know um, for LGH they have the Daisy Awards and all that. So when people get recognized for their achievements, whether it be graduating for with a bachelor's degree, having a Daisy Award, or getting any type of certification, it's gratifying to the employee and they will want to stay. So retention strategies to retain staff um, would be recognizing the staff's efforts, especially on days that management knows it's busy. Tell the staff they're doing a good job. Um, to keep up the good work, stuff like that. Provide personal feedback on each and every staff member. Tell them where they're doing good and give them a constructive criticism if they would need it. Publicly recognize employees at huddles. There's huddles, at least on our unit, at 7 in the morning, at 3 p.m., and sometimes 7 at night. So recognize employees at huddles, and that way they feel important. Recognize an employee monthly, kind of like an employee of the month um, bulletin. Have a healthy work environment. Um, and let staff voluntarily transfer before they burn out. There's staff members that sometimes want to leave a unit, but um, management won't let them go because they're a very good nurse. So sometimes you just have to let them go and let them transfer out voluntarily so that they don't leave the unit completely or burn out. Um, Turnover, there's voluntary versus involuntary. So, voluntary turnover is when an employee chooses to leave an organization for any type of reasons, and involuntary turnover would be termination of a employee, such as firing. Um, Turnover is determined by personal characteristics, so age, education, transportation, economy, job openings, and contact at other facilities very much drive turnover. Um, if people are happy where they're at, um, they're more likely to stay. If they have a friend at another facility, they're more likely to go. It all depends, and it all depends how they are personally feeling. Um, on the next slide, you'll see turnover costs are high. Um, so, according to the 2016 National Healthcare Retention and RN Staffing report, hospitals can lose 5.2 to 8.1 million annually from nursing turnovers. That's a lot of money. When you're talking about orienting nurses, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months, and all the money that goes into them. Um, And according to Streamline, the healthcare industry is ranked third out of industries with a high turnover rate. Um, just some little facts. I don't have them written down, but um, turnover rate in 2015 for RNs was 17.2%. 43% of newly licensed nurses who worked in a hospital leave their job within 3 years, and 33.5% of those resign after 2 years, and 17.5% only work for a year. So when we're talking about all of these percentages, I know that's a lot of numbers thrown out, but talking about 40% of nurses leaving their job within 3 years. Talk about all the money that the institution is spending on orienting these new nurses, and we don't have enough nurses for the nurses that are leaving. We don't have enough new nurses coming in. And by the time we um, train them and orient them, the other nurses who are maybe unhappy have left, and there's still a deficit. Um, so to reduce turnovers, um, there should be job previews or shadowing. I know when I was first hired, well, before I made my decision, my nurse manager let me shadow on the unit for a period of time. It was like a 3 hour period on a night shift. Um, and that very like helped me see the dynamic of everybody that's working and how the floor works. Letting staff move throughout the institution, let people transfer to different units within the institution, and it will help prevent burnout. Find ways to improve the work environment, whether it be like team building exercises or unit outings, or like kind of like the spirit days that you used to have in high school. Do something like that for the unit. Bringing coffee and donuts, something to help improve the work environment. Monitor turnover and evaluate it. Conduct an anonymous surveys on the unit, and conduct management training as well, whether it be through PowerPoints, through seminars. But these things are found to reduce turnovers immensely. On this next slide, you're going to see uh, there's a link to that website. It shows you employee retention surveys, um, which also help with turnovers. And the one at the top is showing from a scale of 1 to 5. Um, you answer the question, 5 being you love it, 1 being you hate it. So management can use these surveys, send them out anonymously um, through email, since everything is so much easier electronically, and see where their staff is at and how they're feeling. Um, it would be so beneficial to the nurse manager as well as the staff. So that way, the nurse manager and the staff are both on the same page. What to do if you find yourself in the situation of you're feeling like you want to leave, or um, you don't feel like this is the unit for you. Talk to management if you are feeling burnout. If you are, see if you can voluntarily transfer to another unit. Um, and talk to management about the ways that they can gauge staff morale, such as the surveys that I had said, or anything else. There's a number of things that each unit can do, and encourage them to implement one of them or a lot of them to see if it would just help um, the nurses and the unit overall. So that is absenteeism, retention, and turnover. Hope you learned something.